Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are all predestined and not accidents. What does predestined mean? Well, let's just take a look at predestined. Predestined truly means being determined in advance by the divine will or fate. Being determined in advance by divine will or fate. Let's go in and take a look at why I believe this. My grandfather's names, I had the three that I'm going to record here. The eldest of them would have been Grandpa Moses. He is the grandfather on my father's side, would be my fifth generation grandfather. Name significant. Why I believe in predestination. Moses. Then his son, his name was John. My father's dad, his name was John. These are men that were in the world and responsible for me being in the bloodline that I am in today, sharing this proof of predestination with you. And then we have my mother's father. This is the maternal marriage of my father and my mother when we talk about this predestination. And his name was Isaac. His father's name was Isaac. These are not names that came from a landowner. These are the names that were assigned to them before their landowners got involved in creating and adding a surname to them. Before slavery, our people existed as the people of God, His chosen people. Let's move on. When I get down to my father's name is Abraham. So, predestined, I say, absolutely. Let's go forward. The church I attended as a child, I was born being introduced to the Lord, and so the church, I attended church as a newborn, and when I really became of age, I was baptized at 7 years old. Predestined or accident? I would say not. My introduction to the Lord was not an accident. My father's name shows up on the rows of an indexed record membership roll between 1964, I think it is, and 1996 at the public library. Again, his name is A.B. Abraham B. Chapman, and his grandfather's name was Walter B. Chapman. The family that I was born into was composed of believers of the Lord. The names are clear. The relatives, Chapmans, all listed here. These are family members for the most part. But my father's name shows up on the rolls in the historical documents, beginning with the year 1951 through 1958. So there are no accidents. We are designed according to the purpose for which God predestined us for in our mother's womb. Again, God's choice of his people is related to their being predestined to be part of his family. But predestination is not an end in itself. And this is what happened. The impact of colonization on our native surnames. This is where this native surname that we would have had we not come through, our ancestors come through chattel slavery via the transatlantic slave trade, the biblical process by which the Lord had already predestined that our ancestors' disobedience would have to be, the consequences for it would be carried out in their third and fourth generations. And so the evolutions of the surnames that we talk about here is the impact of colonization and Western naming conventions. So we begin with my spiritual heritage, my fathers and their association with the Lord as his chosen people. These are names that only could have come from those children who were descendants of Jacob. And we understand that Abraham was Jacob's grandfather, and the Lord made a pact with Abraham that he would bless his seed. Jacob was that blessed seed. Um, so we look at here the European settlers arriving in North America, they imposed their naming systems on peoples, disregarding the fluidity and the complexity of original naming systems. But these were frequently mispronounced or poorly translated, severing the individual's ties to their traditional names and their cultural heritage. Some Native Americans were compelled to adopt surnames for the purpose of legal documentation, further erasing their original names, even as those that we know that existed before colonization and before the invasion of the colonizers into the Americas. Now, this assimilation that they were forced to undergo was part of a broader strategy to diminish the cultures and the languages in the peoples there, leaving many descendants unaware of their ancestral lineage. And this has had its effects on us today, not only in our genealogical understanding, but also our spiritual understanding underwent a lot of these same attacks. Um, and because of that, then we know that there are things that we must come to learn. And I thank the Lord that He's brought me to a place to where was willing enough to realize that I didn't know what I thought I knew. And I had to open myself up for Him to then download into me what He wanted me to know for this season of my life. The ancestry of the name Chapman. Let's look at this. And this is interesting because now we look at what are these, where did they get this name from? Irregardless of my dad's name, his first name, Abraham, my dad's father's first name, John, and his father's first name was Walter, and his father's first name was Moses. These are not names that would have happened into anybody's life without a connection to the Most High prior to being slaves in the colonization of the Americas. All right, so let's look at this name Chapman. This name in its origins can be traced back to the Anglo Saxons of Britain. It is a name for a merchant. Chapman is an occupational surname, which belongs to the category of hereditary surnames. Now, the occupational surnames were derived from the primary activity of the bearer. Rather, they performed a specialized task as well as farming. So they had a trade that we call today, that we call them trades. And they were all farmers, we know that. The subsistence for their subsistence. That means that that was like their part time job. All right. Now, other occupational names were derived from an object that was associated with a particular activity. And so the surname Chapman is derived from the Old English word seaman, which means merchant. Okay. The contemporary notables that also hold this name, Chapman, post after the 1700s. The first one that I know that I love her music is Tracy Chapman, who was born in 1964, American four-time Grammy Award-winning singer and songwriter, best known for her singles "Fast Car" and "Give Me One Reason." She stands out because when I first heard her music, I had no idea who she was. And then after doing research and realizing that she had the same surname that I did, I realized my there was an inherent connection with her music, and she's one of my favorite artists. The next name here that some of you may know is Matthew James, or otherwise known as Matt, who is also has a surname Chapman, born in 1993. American League Major League Baseball player, third baseman, who is currently a free agent or former player of the Oakland Athletics and the Toronto Blue Jays. Um, Smith, an American bounty hunter and reality star, the wife of Dwayne Dog Chapman, is another one of those uses in the surname. Now, when I looked at the family and spoken with family information from my ancestors about Grandpa Moses was a very chosen man, and the reason was is he refused to be called by the slave name of Chapman. Um, the, the the name of the slave owner, who we can trace the records back the furthest to where Grandpa Moses was Thrashley Chapman, and he also has family here in the Georgia area as well. And in my research over the years has brought me to better understanding of both the um, Caucasian, um, his descendants, and also the descendants of that came out of his raping of the my ancestors, Grandpa Moses' wife, and then fathering children from those horrible conditions that left the family not wanting to engage much in the history of all of that because it was such a painful time. However, he did have to later on admit his responsibility to those descendants. And it didn't come, I don't think, willingly. I think it came as a result of a court process. So the surname, next one I want to look at, and this is again, the topic here is being predestined. The surname Irvin is primarily the surname of my mother's father, my maternal grandfather's name, Irvin, primarily considered an Americanized version of the German name Erwin, which is of the old Germanic origin, Germany origin. Germanic origin. And this word means army, friend, a combination of Harry, army, and Winnie, friend. Essentially, Irvin is most likely to have roots in Scottish or Irish ancestry, with a possible connection to the name Irvine. And I want to just take a step back here quickly, because with regard to the name Chapman, there is an Irish connection directly with the name Chapman as well, the origins of that name. Um, Also, my mother's grandpa's first name was Isaac. Um, Isaac Johnson, and um, the word Isaac is a patronymic name or surname of English and Scottish origin. That means the son of John. It is derived from the Latin name Johannes, which comes from the Hebrew name Yohanan, meaning Yahweh or Yeshaya has favored. And so these are direct links to the confirmation of predestination that are in my roots. And so I would bet that when we look at our lives, we can see these predestined determinants that God had assigned to us before we were even born showing up in the names of our ancestors. And that's what's significant about sharing this information with you. Then we move on to my notable maternal grandmother, Letha. Her father's surname was Davis. Now, the Welsh Davis surname is a patronymic, meaning son of David, ultimately derived from the Hebrew name David, meaning beloved. The name became a popular given name throughout the medieval Europe due to the biblical King David of Israel. Did I say predestined? Okay. So we see here that even the misuse of the biblical principles of the names that are in the Bible were attached to the colonizers who had to have some conflict about their lives and what happened in their colonization and how they took about gaining what they had that was not given directly to them. Well, I guess it was because there was a consequence for the kingship of our ancestors going bad. And so there was going to be a period by which there was going to have to be some suffering. And so we see that this transfer of power from our ancestors in leadership to a group of people that really were not capable, but they were designed and purposed to cause us to be jealous because God had we had angered God. Our ancestors had angered him. And in that anger, he says, okay, I'm going to put a people over you that, you will see that you then will be jealous of them, because then you will understand what you've done to me. And certainly we're living in those times today. Now, the other one that I've looked into that is notable is my father's mother, my grandmother Annie. Her father's surname was Hilton. The Hilton surname is derived from a geographical location of Hilton, the hill town, um, versus Holton parishes and townships in Derbyshire villages of England. Okay. So the predestination component here is undeniable for me. And I think when we think about it, it's easy to have undergone as much affliction as our ancestors have suffered, that was passed on to us for the 70 years that was a sign that cursed for the condemnation of misbehavior of our ancestors, which, by the way, is up. And so the Shemitah, if you get our book, How to Become a Remnant, you will see where the Shemitah explains exactly when that curse was lifted. And many people still think they're living in it, but the reality is that you need to get the book in order to know that you're not. Predestined. Again, my father's name was Abraham. So there's just no way that that connection would not be a part of the predestination of my life. I am number 5 of 6 children. So that means I've got a brother named Abraham. And so, I'm pleased to have received this revelation and can now share it on with you in hopes that it will encourage you and inspire you to realize in your own life that we are all predestined and none of us are accidents. Come into your own and love the person you are, but get to know from whence you came. All right. Well, we hope that you've enjoyed the presentation here, and we're going to go ahead and say goodbye.